Welcome to the Action Lab Live. I am Torlando, your co-host. With me is Chris Watson. What's up, Chris? How you doing, man?
Man, is it freezing cold in Bloomington, or like you're zipped to the top? I mean, the whole bit. Like,
No, it's not. I did have a dream last night that it was snowing, but I woke up and it was not snowing.
okay,
So I,
all right,
I, I guess that's just been on my mind. It was a little chilly this morning when I
okay,
left the house,
all
when I
right.
took the kids
I mean, I,
to
I
school.
like the fit, man. I like it. I'm not bashing it. I like the fit. I just all the way to the top kind of thing, right? It gets my neck hair sometimes. I can't do it.
Dang, calling me out right off.
Dude, I mean, like the thing that people don't know if you're watching this is like the relationship that me and Torlando have is we try to make sure to keep each other in check, and I
Yeah,
love that relationship because I think that is what we don't have in our organizations is we don't have this ability that we've invested enough into the other side of the table that we then can take a withdrawal every once in a while, right? Like our relationship
yeah.
truly is a bank account that we've made a lot of deposits in each other. And so when we need to make a withdrawal, which that wasn't a withdrawal, but just metaphorically, when we need to take a withdrawal and be critical, hey, we need to figure out a strategy behind this, some accountability, that we can do that and it doesn't tarnish the entire core of the relationship, right? And I
Hmm.
think in today, in talking about the CRM, sometimes the CRM is the only piece of the relationship that two people have, that literally they get
Mm.
in and they think, man, those notes that he put in, that's awful. How am I supposed to close the lead? Is this even a lead? Like, what is this? Like, I can't even, is this wingdings? Like, what kind of
Yeah.
font did they use in this thing? Right. And so I
Yeah.
think it's a perfect example of what we're talking about today, that the CRM itself, how it's being utilized, is almost making it an abyss where we can't find it. It's a void. Things fall in it and we can't find it. It's like losing a sock in the dryer sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, you're going about 10 miles per hour because that was a segue if I've ever heard one.
I tried, man. I should have been on radio, I think, in my life at
Yeah,
one
it was
point.
so good. It was so good. But you are not lying. The facts are that we have the CRM tool in our business. The question is, are we using it effectively? Is it a collaboration tool or is it something that people are using in silos? And we titled this program "Climbing Out of the CRM Abyss" because oftentimes marketing does a decent job of getting the names in there, they get the contacts, it falls into the CRM through the contact form, and then the follow-up process starts to break down. We can't get in touch with those leads go cold, and it's like they're falling into a moat that you got to climb them, you got to pull them out of. And I think what we want to do over the course of this show is teach people how to make the CRM a keystone, that linking rock that connects the bridge. Let me throw out my graphic. Let me throw out my graphic. There it is, the keystone, right? On one side here, we've got marketing. On the other side, we got sales. And how can we use the CRM to be the keystone that bridges the gap? So, Chris, let me start off by asking, what are some of the facts? How are people using the CRM today or not using it? What's the reality?
Yeah, so when I dove in and looked up some hard facts. We want to bring you guys some stuff that is extremely valuable, that isn't just our opinion. So when I pulled up a Harvard Business Review, they did a study that showed that out of all of the companies that they interviewed, I think it was something like 10,000, that only 8% of the companies that said we are data driven, we use the data in our CRM to drive customer experience, customer journey, only 8% of those were actually using the data effectively.
Mm,
8%.
yeah, that's
And
no
when
good.
I think about, the CRM as a whole, I think that, and this is something we talked pre-show, is that the narrative of what a CRM is and what it does has really shifted. Even probably like light years shifted during COVID, but just in general has shifted because I think sometimes it feels like the CRM's a junk drawer in your house, right? We all
Mm,
have one. We
mhm.
like, oh, what do I do with the X-Acto knife that I used one time on the school project for science fair? It's like junk
Right.
drawer. What do I
Yep.
do with the 8-volt battery that they don't make anymore because they only make nine? Junk drawer. And so I think sometimes the narrative of the CRM really plays a huge key role because, and I think we talked about this, was because of marketing automated tools, because of sales enablement tools, because as sales and marketing, we have other tools that we're utilizing that we're
Mhm.
pulling data from the CRM. So I think sometimes it feels like the CRM is like this like Dropbox. It's like a back server. So there's not
Mhm.
much intention in utilizing it effectively and making sure the data is right and combing through it, that almost it's like it just is there. It just sits there, right? It's just like it's
Yeah.
available, but we don't really. I think, and I think what you talked about, and I'll let you speak to it, is what's happened with LinkedIn, especially over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, that make us even maybe more shift the narrative of the CRM.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it that there's a ton of activity happening on LinkedIn, and you can find the name of any business, especially if you are using Sales Navigator. You can get all the names of the contact people. You can get all that. You're not always able to connect with them. They have to accept that connection. But it seems like any business that you could ever want is available in these tools, and people are in them every day. And that, I think, leads people to neglect their CRM, which, when they really need to kind of coddle it and treat it like their baby, nurture it and grow it and build it. Because if you do it correctly, it can actually be a much better. It can almost be like a mini LinkedIn without the feed, without the posting, but you can have all the people in it that you need to develop a good pipeline. But you have to be on it. You can't get distracted. You can't, like, oh shoot, I gotta. I'm so guilty of this. I'll look at my appointment schedule, and about once a month I'll be like, oh shoot, I gotta update everything in there, and all of a sudden I'm unloading a bunch of deals and stuff in my pipeline. So yeah, that's what you're saying is truth. Like, there are a lot of competing tools, and the question is the CRM dead? Is it worth it? Can we still utilize it? I think that's what we're trying to solve here today.
Yeah, and I think the other piece from really organizational standpoint is, well, what is the accountability measures of it, and how are we holding people accountable to actually execute in the CRM? My wife's in healthcare, and I always think about how I go into my doctor. Let's just say I go into my doctor once a year for a checkup.
Hmm.
But when I go into my doctor, they know this is our moment to retain Chris as a patient. So they
Right.
ask, like, man, how's your son? And hey, are you still doing what you're doing? And like, hey, since the last time we met, I knew you're getting ready to go on a big trip. How was it? And like, they have all this stuff in there that, and maybe being in sales is not fair, but like it feels a bit artificial because we haven't talked in
Mm.
a year, and now you're
Hmm.
regurgitating everything that you learned 11 months ago, right?
Yeah. Right.
But I think we should see that as the importance of this kind of, we know your story customer, we know your story prospect, and we've captured that in every conversation and every interaction, whether that be your interaction of what you clicked on or downloaded or looked at, or from a sales side of the conversation we had a year ago where you said we weren't interested because we're not trying to overcome that specific obstacle that your service or product does. And so I think, to your point, I think that what I've now seen in the medical world is it really is a collaborative tool. It's a collaborative tool
Yep.
between the very first person that meets you at the door and what they put in the file or
Yep.
the
Yep.
electronic medical record, to then the medical assistant that comes in, to then the doctor themselves, to then the medical assistant post, and where they're
Hmm.
taking you. And so I don't see that in a lot of organizations between sales and marketing.
Yeah.
It's almost more like we get the lead, marketing, they dump it in, they wash their hands of it. Hey, good luck, guys.
Right.
Then sales goes in, they look at it, they're like, what do I do with this? And then sometimes if they don't like it, do they reach out to marketing and ask? No, they just build their own strategy. and they put their own
Mhm.
notes. I can't tell you how many times I've looked in like a CRM of notes about a customer that we've been trying to close for 3 years, and they're just so fragmented and disjointed. And
Mhm.
the truth is, I don't know what the stats are for marketing, but in sales, the turnover is every 18 months. So most salespeople, that they'll last for 18 months. So if you think
Mm.
about that like Chris was typing in the CRM 18 months ago, now Bill is typing in the notes
Mhm.
now and
Mhm.
updating that information. They're entirely two different people. So I think what we're saying is the CRM has to be a collaborative tool, but instead of allowing the narrative to shift, the
Mhm.
organization has to take control of that. Sales and marketing have to come together and say, okay, how are we going to utilize the CRM in an effective collaborative way?
Right.
And I don't know about you, but to your point, your thought of like, oh no, I need to go update. I think that's how most people feel. It's like
Yeah.
it's the last thought, instead of thinking this is what's setting up the next person in this customer journey. This is setting them up for success, and this is what's creating a customized feel for the customer themselves.
Yeah. I think your example of how the medical industry is using it is very interesting because it's for them, you have to stay up to date on this stuff. You have to, if I'm going in and bringing my daughter into the pediatrician, and they have to know the weight and the growth and the vaccination records, and they have to know that stuff. There's not an option. So they are very systematic
Mhm,
about who is filling out that information.
mhm,
Every time you go into the office, you are updating information, updating insurance information, updating weight and so every single time you're keeping those things up to date. And it's obvious why in a B2B situation why that wouldn't be as necessary, because it's not life or death. It's not the health of the individual.
mhm,
But if we treated it like it was, or if we treated it like this is life or death for our business to have these up to date records, then I think that we might start thinking about it differently. One of the questions that I have, Chris, for you, and I think it would be interesting for us to kind of debate this a little bit, is how sales sees the CRM and what it's used for versus how marketing sees it and what marketing thinks it's used for.
Yeah, I think it's a variable answer. I'm going to speak from my perspective, but I think and this is, I think the point we're kind of making is like, if the narrative's not controlled, right, to say this is what CRM is going to be for sales, then they just kind of decide what they're going to do. But I think it's supposed to be a a place to keep up with the story of the prospect or the customer, so that when I call or email or reach out, that I can build familiarity quickly. The problem is that either an organization, a salesperson relies on it too heavily.
Hmm.
So their messaging is crap because it's like, hey, Bill, I know we talked on 6/8 and you said then you
Mm,
weren't in. And that's like, well, that sucks. Why is that what you're pulling out of? So then that's more of a, how are we utilizing the information in the CRM to then go take our
right.
sales action? Or it's almost like just a checklist thing of like, yep, I checked the CRM. Yep, so I think for most people, and this is what we're even seeing, is that it used to be, and I'm gonna date myself here, but it used to be there wasn't like Apollo or Zoom Info or Seamless AI. There wasn't any of those. So like when I went and met Bill and got his business card, I had to put all that in the CRM because that was the database that I then would
Right.
say, this is how I'm reaching back out to Bill. His email's in there, his phone number's in there. But I think now I think here's what's funny is like what I would say is I don't think salespeople ever looked at it as a relationship management tool. I think
Hmm.
we looked at it as, this is where I'm putting all my prospects to then save myself time to not have to go
Hmm.
find their email or go find their phone number to pick up where we left off. But I think now, because we can go find contact info anyways. I mean, shoot, they're
Right.
talking on LinkedIn about cold FaceTime calls right now, which is crazy.
Right.
Then it's not an information database. It truly is becoming a relationship management database of how am I managing the relationship because I have so much data.
Yeah.
How am I utilizing the CRM? So I think now the way I utilize it, and I did it this morning. Like I literally talked to a prospect this morning. I went and put it into the CRM that I have. And
Mm-hmm.
the notes I put in are for me to be transported back to the last conversation we had. So then I can bring context to the next conversation that we're going to have.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Let me go from the marketing perspective.
Please.
So when I first got into B2B sales, I reached out to a guy I went to high school with. He was in B2B sales, works at a company where they have hundreds of salespeople, and so I wanted to see how the big organizations are doing it. And what he told me was that they live and breathe in Salesforce. And I said, because I was wondering, I was like, well, how do you prospect for sales? How do you prospect for leads and all this? And he was like, every potential client that we could possibly have is in the CRM. We already have it. We don't have to source leads. They're all there. All I have to do is live in Salesforce and nurture the relationships of the people that are in there. So I took that to mean, okay, well, my job as a marketer is to source that list, is to sort, not only source the list, but to build awareness of our company and our brand so that the people on that list have enough familiarity with what we do and what we offer so that when sales does their action, that that it doesn't feel cold, that it's not unwelcome, because they have enough context for who they are, so that they're open and willing to have a conversation. So last week when we were on the show, we talked about what is a lead, and you about had a heart attack when I said it's a contact information of a company who's in market. Well, my goal is to find the smallest viable audience, right? LinkedIn is a massive audience. It's too many people. How many people? There's 700 million active users, something like that. I think that's what it is. It's too many people. It's too many people for one company to try and get their message out to everybody. And so you have to section off that list. You have to make it a smaller audience that's going to be viable for your organization to actually make money off of. And so my goal as a marketer is to take that large pool, turn it into a smaller pool, and then I'm starting to think of the entire life cycle, the entire marketing life cycle, not only the stuff leading up to them being willing to book an appointment, but if they book that appointment and they decide that it's not for them at that time, how are we continuing that conversation so that they'll be ready at a later date? And so the way that I use technology, and I've got a couple up my sleeve, I'm in tech. So, with our company Periodic, that's, online booking. I'm also a certified Keep distributor. So Keep is a CRM, sales automation tool. So the way that I'm looking at these things is, how can I get that small select group, that viable audience, to be willing to schedule an appointment and to be willing to receive ongoing content to nurture them? And if there isn't enough value, if it's not good quality content, they're not going to pay attention. And if they don't pay attention, then anytime a salesperson reaches into the CRM and says, hey, I want to start, building a relationship with this person, they are doing it from square one because the content wasn't doing anything for them.
But the one thing I'm going to say that you have a unique perspective on, that is why we've created the Action Lab, and which is why we have to help organizations climb out of the CRM abyss, is that you have the unique perspective of, you are both marketing and sales, which means when you go into your CRM as a salesperson hat on, you actually can hold yourself accountable as a marketing person, that the data that you put in from the marketing standpoint didn't help you in sales.
Right.
That isn't happening in organizations. It's actually almost more combative. It's
Mm.
more sales goes in, and it only takes 10 strikeouts for me to say, well, that isn't valuable information that marketing's giving me. So I guess I'm
Mhm.
gonna have to go out and do it on my own. Because remember, it's a time thing, it's a time investment thing that a salesperson is like, okay, how many calls do I need to make to get as many prospects as I can that say yes, let's move on, to then discovery, and it's a distilling all the way down to the proposal. So if that's the case, and it starts from, do I have quality information? Well, we both know that first interaction with the salesperson that you had, recently at the gym,
Mhm.
that I had, recently with some guy that was going to do landscaping at the yard. That first interaction sets the tone for the rest of the relationship. So if I'm using not good data, outdated, doesn't really help tell me a story, and I use that, it almost is like worse than if I would have just called them and not doing anything,
Right.
because I'm going based on poor context information data from marketing. So what I would say is your unique perspective, and this is why we've launched Action Lab, is the unique perspective is we need marketing to care about the success that sales has with the information that they've gathered and put in there. We also need sales to want to know, hey, marketing, how are you capturing this information? And what is the story that brought them here so that I can continue it effectively?
Yeah.
Instead, to your point, that CRM kind of sits there in the middle, and it's
Mhm.
either a capstone or it's a black hole. It's the
Right.
abyss that we're putting lead stuff in. Sales is kind of like trying to find it, and eventually they say, whatever, we're just going to dump information into the CRM later. And then you have this place where everyone's just dumping into the junk drawer, into the abyss, and no one, and then you go in there and you're almost frustrated. You're
Yeah.
not excited. You don't actually think any of the leads are going to be good. So
Right.
I think that what is apparent is that when you're speaking from, when you're able to wear both hats like you are in your
Yeah.
organization,
Right.
then you care about success on both sides. And I think because of the nature of business, does marketing care if sales has success? And like, let's take it even one step further. Does it matter if sales has success? Does marketing lose their job? Are they held
Right.
accountable? No, they're not. In sales, is sales accountable to the lead potentially that came in? No, it was there. So I think that's the other danger, is like, are we holding them accountable together as a unit, or are we holding them accountable separately, with the
Mhm.
CRM being this like driving force that sits in the middle? My last comment will be, organizations that can afford a Salesforce type CRM that kind of is a full suite, yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, they can drive everything through there, and that is the engine. But for a lot more organizations, they have to like kind of have a different tech stack, like where this is
Mhm.
our CRM, and this API links into here, and this speaks to this,
Mhm.
and then we do that. So their processes are a little bit more um, complex, where then it's even more important to have a conversation and to build that narrative around the CRM.
Yeah, and I think that our whole, you know, our thesis, our of the Action Lab is that um our process and the things that we're talking about isn't a one size fits all solution. It really has to be what is right for your company. It's getting into holding an action lab where you bring in sales and marketing and you're asking that question, okay, these are the tools that we have. Are we using them effectively? How do we want to be using them more effectively? And then coming together and saying, okay, this is what we need as salespeople. This is what we hope for and want from marketing. And then for marketing to be able to say, okay, we could do that, but this is what we are hoping for and wanting from sales. Because if sales is boots on the ground and you're talking to the people and you can get more qualitative data, then we can understand the customer and the prospect better. And if I as a marketer can go in and look at pipeline and read the story, read the journey, and understand what is resonating with these people as sales is talking to them directly, now I can craft a better marketing message. I can go in and I can find better fits, better leads which ultimately is going to increase inbound. And when you increase inbound, well, it's kind of game over at that point, right? Because you have people who are ready to buy.
Yeah, I think the metaphor is like if you had a family of, let's just say, 4 kids that have families of their own and they inherit a property. Mom and dad pass away, they inherit a property. And 2 of the couples say, "Hey, we want it to be an investment property. Let's clean it up. Let's Airbnb it. Let's make money off of it." And then 2 of the people are like, "No, no, no. We want it to be a vacation home where we share it and we use it for different vacations. We all come together and honor our mom and dad." I think that's kind of like the CRM, is that we all see it as a tool, but you have these like differing opinions. How are we going to use it and how should we use it, right? And I think that's what the Action Lab can provide, is alignment on tools like the CRM to say, let's quit making this the junk drawer. Let's quit making what is it to use, sales? Well, we see it as this. We need to change that narrative. Marketing, how do you see it? Oh, we see it as this. Okay. Well, how can we help everyone see it in a similar fashion so that it truly becomes an effective tool for, to your point, driving? And it's funny because I think you said something right now that really is a great jump off for probably for the next time we chat. But to see a CRM that it actually isn't linear, it doesn't work just in one direction. Because you even said there, marketing needs to be tapping into how sales is having success with certain customers and then maybe shifting their marketing efforts because of what's resonating. I don't know that that's happening really anywhere.
No,
I think it's more
there's
that
no way, right?
once marketing dumps in the lead to the abyss, that they're like, next.
Yep.
Next.
Let's find more leads. Let's find more leads, right?
Correct.
And a lot of that comes down to the accountability metrics and all of the broken attribution models. If the accountability factor is marketing has to drive leads, sales has to close deals, and it's the number of leads that you're rewarded for, then it breaks down, right? Like it all has to tie back into revenue. It all has to tie back into, are we hitting the target market? Are the leads qualified? And you're right, I have this unfair advantage in that I handle both. But over time, since I've been at Periodic all the way to today, over time, what I've seen is that the lead quality goes up and up and up. At the beginning, I was finding these these rinky-dink businesses that were looking for a Calendly knockoff, and they wanted it to be cheap and all this stuff, and that wasn't going to work for us because we're an enterprise system. And over time, the inbound stuff started climbing. The quality of the leads started getting more in line with what we were wanting. And that's because I had basic things. It's like, okay, well, I want somebody who has, over 100, locations or 100 different clients. And then, the last call I had, or one of the calls last week, the guy was like, yeah, I've got 1,500 dentists as clients. And I was like, that is a qualified lead. That's hella qualified, right? Because that's what I want. But that didn't happen at the beginning. And it wasn't going to happen unless I had that ability to, I'm having the conversation with myself, but for larger organizations, they're going to have conversations with teams.
Yeah, I want to throw out a challenge to anybody that listens to this, watches this, sees this, or is in this role, that, even if you don't hire the Action Lab and us tomorrow, something I think you could do that'd be really effective is go to a salesperson, one of your sales leaders, and ask them, hey, who do you think that marketing is trying to bring into the organization as a lead? Like, who is this ideal customer profile? Like, who is it that they're trying to get? Like, basically what you're saying, and see what they say. Like, in layman's terms, don't tell me the company line. Like, who are we trying to go after? What are they trying to solve for? And what are the outcomes they really want? And then go to marketing and say, hey, tell me about like the last 4 people that we closed in sales that made you all rethink your marketing. I think that conversation between a VP of sales and a VP of marketing to say, hey, let's ask each other's teams this question would be a fascinating understanding that either they are aligned or that sales is like, yeah, I'm guessing we're just going after we've always gone after. And marketing's like, yeah, I mean, I guess they closed what we sent them. And you're like, oh, they actually don't. And I think the word is care.
Mm.
Care. They don't
Call
actually
them out,
care.
Chris.
They don't actually care for the entire customer journey. They only care for the moment they clocked in to become the guide in the journey.
Mm. Mm. Powerful stuff. All right, folks, that's the end of our show. We're out of time. Tune in next week, 11 o'clock Eastern. Right here, you might be watching on LinkedIn, you might be watching on Facebook, you might be watching on YouTube. We're streaming live every single Wednesday. And if you want to hold one of these action lives, reach out to Chris. Contact my, what are some ways that we can reach out to you, Chris?
LinkedIn's going to be the easiest. I'd find me on LinkedIn. That would be the best. And I will tell you what we value here at the Action Lab is we want to give you actionable things. This isn't theory. It's not just opinion. It literally is like I just gave you. Hey, try these 3 things out. Go ask these 3 questions to almost expose, to surface some of these things going on that you may not know are going on, but that is limiting pipeline and revenue and even just strategic communication.
Awesome. Well, like I said, next week, Wednesday, we'll be back on, and you can go to join.actionlab.live to register, and we hope to see you there next week.
Stay warm, bro.
I'm kind of hot.